Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right.
Can you see me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go. I mean, it's the stream's live now. Just letting it connect to everything, and then we'll get started here in like another minute.
And you could, yeah, good, you can hear me okay.
You know what I didn't load? Here we go. All right, man. We are live. What's going on, Samir? Happy holidays, man.
Happy holidays to you too. You can probably tell I put on a few pounds with the holidays. Yeah. I'm using my
I mean,
headphones now. So,
it's the holidays. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Yeah. No, it was. I probably put on a few too. I didn't stay as active in my gym sessions over the last couple of weeks. I got in a couple, but then in typical season getting up there in age fashion, like I freaking hurt my back like 2 days ago, man. It's killing me.
oh,
So I'm not. I've been avoiding the gym, using that as my excuse, but I'll get back here pretty soon. But I don't know, like it's going to be crazy because it's going to be, freaking 2025 is going to be here in 2 days, and then of course the gym's going to just be packed with everybody who set their New Year's resolutions, and so it's going to kind of
you know
suck.
it.
But anyway,
You know it.
dude, good to see you, man. Good to talk to you. This is welcome everybody. This is the season 2 finale of the Identity Jedi Show. This has been a huge season. A huge season for the media company and my team behind it, and then just in general, man, it's been a really good year, crazy year in identity. So wanted to do this, share a bunch of stuff with you, all the viewers, subscribers, and listeners. Give me and Samir a chance to catch up. We're going to share some highlights from some of our favorite episodes over the season. We're going to be sharing I got some stats to share with you guys over some things that we've done over this past year. We're going to have a virtual roundtable, so that's going to be kicking off in about 30 minutes. We got some special guests coming in. So we scoured through all of the great interviews that we had, and we did a call out to have some people come on and join us. So we're all going to be doing this live. So as with any kind of live production, we'll see how things go. Hopefully everybody can show up and kind of see and hear us. But really just super glad to be able to do this and kind of share some of the things from this past season with all of you who have listened, who have watched, who subscribed, who tune in. So we're streaming now on LinkedIn. We're streaming on YouTube. So you can watch it any of those places. And then I'm gonna hide the chat overlay for right now. So it's just me and Samir, but we'll pull the chat up, and feel free to chat, throw some questions in there. We've got some mailbag questions that Samir and I are going to answer a little bit later on. So it's jam-packed. We got a lot for you. So kick back, relax on this Monday, December 30th. I know most of you aren't really working, or maybe you are, but I doubt it, right? It's like New Year's Eve is tomorrow, then it's New Year's in the middle of the week. So let's kick back, have some fun, and go over some stuff. So Samir, man, let's get a check-in. How was your holidays, man? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. spent a week in Mexico. It was nice, relaxing, beautiful weather. all inclusive, so I didn't have to do much. So I've come back in a very zen state, so I feel good, but the mind never stops working about what's next, right? So I'm
Right.
always
Yeah.
like, what's happening in 2025? What's the plan? What are my goals? Like you mentioned, right? We start off with these. I'm gonna hit the gym and I'm gonna, you know, go to the WeWork more often versus working from home and not wasting money on that. But same with work, right? It doesn't end. It's like our careers define us in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely get that, man. I mean, I already started. I mean, it's a whole process for me anyway, but I usually start about 2 weeks right before the end of the year and start working on like what I want to do for next year, what I want to accomplish, and start getting everything set up. I do spend, New Year's Eve. This is actually the first time in a while that I'm not going to be. So I'm usually in California for this time because I love to be by the water, and I have my whole little thing that I sit down and do a reflection of the year, what goals did I set, which ones did I hit, which ones did I not hit, what did I learn from that, and really I spent about a day of just kind of reflection so I can figure out like what do I want to do for next year, right? Is there something I want to carry over? Is there something the last couple of years what I've really dived into is there something I need to abandon and let go, right? I'm the type of person I want to try and do everything. And sometimes, it's like, okay, listen, it's either not now or, hey, this isn't for me. This isn't something I need to be focused on. I need to switch my attention somewhere else. So, but it's been weird, man. Like this whole holiday season just kind of came kind of fast. Like it just didn't seem like it was, Christmas yet. And then now it's New Year's. So I don't know. I'm a little behind, but I did start doing some work and I'll make an announcement here, later on, and a little teaser for you guys about some stuff that I do have planned coming out from the media company that we're going to drop actually starting this Friday. Right. So there you go. There's the first teaser. Got some new stuff that we're going to drop for you guys on Friday. But yeah, it's crazy, man. I want to shift to like this last year in identity, man. I don't think, other than maybe like call it like 2021, 2022, somewhere around there, like, dude, I don't think I've seen a year in identity where just so much new stuff happened, like so many new companies, so much money invested, right? I feel like, especially in this climate, right? Because we took that kind of turn like in 2022 when everybody was just kind of like, all right, well, money was drying up and like, everything kind of slowed down. But then I felt it, at least it felt like, and I tried to go get some data behind this, but freaking man, Crunchbase is so expensive. I was like, I'm not going to go pay for it, right? And then I tried Owler, all this other stuff, whatever. But I just feel like 2024, like we saw like at least 4 or 5 different like non-human companies. If they didn't start or like announce they're coming out of stealth or whatever, they got like huge, like capital investments, right? They raise more rounds. And so we saw the non-human, we saw more acquisitions. Like I just felt like this was a very, very active year.
Yeah.
More so than I can kind of recall in the past. What are your thoughts on that?
So I didn't follow identity, the industry specifically, prior to this year or the year before, maybe 2023, 2024 is when I really started following it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus overall security. But I agree with you in the sense of, since I founded my startup in 2020, 2021, right? 2022, money was still flowing, but wasn't as focused on identity, to be honest. It was more
Yeah.
around other pieces of security, other areas. But this year, you're absolutely right, right? Um, I was blown away with the number of not just non-human identity, but even the companies that were in the AI for SecOps.
Mm.
Their
Yeah.
first use case that every single one I spoke to was around identity,
Yeah.
right? And then, what's really funny is that I started researching data security posture management as a market, which is pretty high on the Gartner hype cycle. And if you look at data security posture management, it starts with who has access to this data, right?
Yeah.
And so I think identity is becoming, and I'm seeing it a lot, right? I'm seeing these comments on LinkedIn, just general posts, etc., where people are like, identity is the perimeter. They're finally that message is resonating beyond just identity gurus, but also to professionals across the industry that they need to solve for that, right? So it's been pretty impressive. And then acquisitions, yes, but I expected more. I actually expected more. Like
Really?
I kind of expected towards the end of the year there'd be FOMO and Okta would go buy an NHI company, or Cisco would buy an IGA company, or CyberArk would make an announcement in something, kind of unique. Um, it's always, I always feel like towards the end of the year, people are like, oh, I got to make a splash so that I can kick off 2025 really well. I think the acquisition started really heavy, then it slowed down.
Yeah.
David, I feel next year is going to be just as acquisitive for identity. I can't speak for everybody else, but I feel
Right.
like there's been so much interest. I feel like there's some really interesting ITDR companies that are built on agentic AI now.
Mm.
As AI for SecOps, so they're building AI. I don't want to name names because some of them are in stealth, but I feel like there's going to be some more interest there. And I think either legacy companies, when I say legacy companies, I mean this in the nicest way, that they're built on a different stack. It's going to take them some time to catch up.
Right.
Are either
Right.
going to try to build, better, faster agents that are more knowledgeable, supervisor agents, worker agents, agents to talk to agents, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, I think, in 2025 as well.
Yeah. You know what? So, I mean, a small rant here. Like, we've got to get past this whole offense to be called legacy, right? It is what it is. I mean, you can come up with whatever, you know, maybe we can come up with another term, but the fact of the
Yeah,
matter is, like, look, if you were built, if your company was founded 20 years ago, like it's 2020, it's 2024, give me 2025.
yeah,
So if you were founded anywhere from like 2000 to 2010, like come on, like you're 15 to 20 years old, right? Like technology has moved so much since then, right?
yeah,
So it's just the nature of it, right? Now, does it mean that you're not able to compete? No, I mean, absolutely you can, but the fact of the matter is, like, your legacy, you're using things that modern applications don't use. I mean, that's just facts. But anyway, but no,
that's
I
true.
agree with that. I expect, and I don't know if it's going to happen in 2025, given some of the funding rounds that some of these NHI companies, took in.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because I don't think 2025 is going to be the year that the tap turns back on, and VCs get a little bit more, VCs, PE, like just in general, and companies get a little bit more, loose with the purse strings. But um, I I would say, and I guess we'll kind of go into predictions a little bit here, but like I would say one or two of these NHI companies are going to get bought. I could see that happen in 2025. Um, and it's going to be, my guess would be, it's going to be the ones that either don't, because I've already, when I was doing that search earlier and some of the stuff I did find on Crunchbase, I've already noticed that some of these companies that came out as NHI have already shifted their message around what they are, right?
oh yeah,
They're identity
yeah,
security companies, or they're, full-fledged platform. They've kind of, not saying that they still don't do NHI, they do, but they've shifted their messaging away from it. So where I'm going with this is, I think some of the more like still focused on NHI companies, I could see them getting acquired in 2025. And then it's going to be interesting to see how the remaining companies shift and go into that platform, kind of phase, and how they message, and what they do and put out there, because we're NHI has this weird kind of, it's following on the backs of ITDR, right, which was super super quick market. Everybody looked at it, was like, this is excellent. We're excited about it, but I need it to be in my IDP. Like, I want it as part of something else, and so that's what we saw. We saw a ton of acquisitions in that space, and so you're kind of seeing the same thing, which NHI just feels like kind of like a feature, but also it reminds me of PAM, 15 years ago, where it's like, hey, this is a bigger thing than we thought it was. We do need to pay attention, and we've got to figure out how to build a muscle around it. So it's like, crap, like organizations, like, I see that this is important, but how do I work this in? And so NHI has both of those two things going for it. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see, like, how, I think next year is going to be a tell for us of how this market's going to continue to go. If we see if we see acquisitions happening in the NHI space, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of their competitors respond. Do some of the competitors that just got funded, do they go on the offensive, and they go, screw it, like, we're going to go and we're going to acquire, right? Like, there's a bunch of
yeah.
small, IGA next companies out there, right? That they could just go, hey, well, let's go grab one of these, and
I think, yeah.
yeah.
I was going to add to that. I think there's going to be, when I say there's going to be more activity in 2025, I'm I mean not just from like the big publicly traded identity company buying a startup, right?
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of people. There's going to be the haves and the have-nots, right? So if somebody raised $100 million from Andreessen, right, or $100 million from Bain Capital, right, they have the firepower to weather a storm, right? And 2024, from a CISO perspective, was a little bit of a storm in terms of funding, and economy wasn't great, and a lot of budgets didn't increase, etc.
Yeah.
Um, and identity was top of mind, but for example, IGA was not. ITDR was, but IGA wasn't. Like even some of the best IGA companies did okay compared to, let's say, the broader security market, right? And a lot of people are building. They're building on new stacks, all this stuff. Great activity, great energy, lots of interesting founders. But I think in 2025, what I was going towards was, you know how in one of our episodes, probably the one where you and I were in Vegas, we talked about this, right? We said, hey, it'd be nice to see a venture capitalist act like a private equity and bring
Yeah.
together four or five identity companies, right? And so I believe it might not be driven by the VC, but it's going to be driven by just sheer economics. I've spent all my money. I'm tired. I've been at it for 2 years now, 3 years, maybe 1 year even, and I know that there's no path because I can't close enough customers to get my next round of funding. Right? I raised my pre-seed round, my seed round. I got a couple million in the bank. I burned through it. I did my best. Hey, well-funded and recent Bain Capital company. Hello, I can add a really good feature to what you have, and you can compete with NHI companies. You can compete with IGA companies. Heck, I was reading in the paper about a company that bought a workflow automation company, an identity startup that bought a workflow automation startup that was Y Combinator funded, right? I don't know the terms of the deal, but the company was the workflow automation product had been around for a year and a half because it was YC 2023, right?
Right.
So it's not like a multi-million dollar exit. It's probably an
Right.
acqui hire, right? I think, and that's really smart. I think when I read that, I said, hey, wouldn't it be kind of cool if an IGA startup went and bought a SaaS integrations play? One API to integrate to 100 SaaS apps and get all the data you need, right? Uh, you know, um, Maybe there's an agentic play there that they can buy, a
Yeah.
component of a very smart agent.
That's where
But
I
I
was
think
going
what,
to.
yeah, and then the last one, David, I think because I know you play around a lot with agents, but the last one I was going to go to was I feel like identity companies have bought identity companies, and I know ITDR is a way for identity companies to get access to SecOps mindset around threat detection response. But what would be really cool in 2025? My wish list is an identity company buys a non-identity company that's in security, in pure security, not workflow
Mm,
automation, and all that is good. That's just building a better. Let's just call it, when you buy a workflow automation company, a better SaaS integration company, you're building a better engine. You're not really creating new features for the
right.
customer, right? But if an identity company goes and buys a pure play security company and becomes like, hey, we think identity is so important that we've built something else that kind of is tangential to identity, right? That would be really cool in 2025. Wish list for Samir.
Okay. All right. No, that would be cool. And I mean, I think that would signal so much to the industry, right? About how identity starts to play in the security market now, right? That's a very interesting, that's an interesting wish list right there, man. I hadn't thought about that. I was thinking more on the agentic AI aspect. Like my wish is like, okay, one of these companies goes out and just says, look, I mean, there's so much going on in the AI industry; it's ridiculous. I love it. Like it's moving so fast. But you take one of these companies that's building these, agentic AIs, agents, and just go, hey, we're just going to take this, or we're gonna go buy this company, and we're just going to apply it towards, our platform, right? And roll this out as, hey, we're going to roll you out. Like, not only do you get our product, but we can roll out these AI agents for you to go help you do access reviews or to help you, whatever it is. That there's so much there that you could look at. I mean, it kind of takes you. I was having this conversation over the holiday in a text thread, and I'm just like, I think the thing with identity, which might be hurting it, is that it's so niche. Like, how do you break out of that, right? Like, what do you to kind of be like this bigger, for a company to like be this bigger company and have this wider range, like, do you get into like, like workflow management? Do you get into like process improvement? Do you get into like service desk? Like, where do you go to kind of like expand, right? Your reach outside of that, to your point, like, okay, go buy a security company and become like a security company, because identity started from just this administrative and compliance. And that's just like, it's not sexy stuff. And there's not a whole lot of room to grow over there. Right. So
Right.
it'll be an interesting year, right? I think we're definitely going to have, I think Cellphone is going to go back out in 2025. I think there'll be a couple of other ones that follow them. So that's going to be interesting to see how that
You mean
goes.
IPO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a report
Okay.
a couple of weeks ago that who they chose to lead their
Oh, interesting.
IPO. I can't remember. I have to go back and look at it. But so they started that process. So that's going to be interesting. Right. Yeah, I'm gonna I'm
Interesting.
gonna have I'm having a nice beer that day to see how the market responds to them coming back out, because it's just going to be interesting and see what it does for the rest of it. But so I wanna move on to this past year. So Samir, this is kind of like a milestone for you, man. This past year was your first year being a podcast host. So what were some of your thoughts, man? How'd you like it? How was your first year being a podcaster?
It's a great question, man. I think when I started, I almost treated it like an extended Zoom call, right? And then I realized that unlike Zoom, where you have very interactive discussions or you're having an interactive debate, you almost like pretending you're in person with the person, right? That's
Yeah,
the whole goal of Zoom, is to allow for collaboration over remote offices, etc. I think podcasting is much more. Every word you say is important. Every saying it in the right order is also very important, right? And it's not a brainstorming session like you do over Zoom, or a discussion call, or a status meeting, right, which is very
right.
short sometimes. So for me, podcasting is so interesting in how there's a level of cadence that's important. When I see great podcast hosts and how they kind of, and I listen to a lot of these, by the way, in my Tesla when I'm driving around, is how good they are at kind of teasing out the discussion points in a nuanced manner. And I think you do a great job. So I've actually learned a lot by being on this. And I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I do get a little nervous, right, at times, where
Yeah.
when you have a lot of very smart people on the call, the imposter syndrome kicks in, because even though I've been a CISO 3 times, right, I'm still new. I'm still a baby when it comes to identity. I still think of
Gotcha.
myself as, and I think it's a good thing to always have that learning mindset. I
Yeah.
think it's taken some time to get over the, oh wow, these guys are talking about stuff like, one of our podcasts was talking. She invented the Cedar policy language, right, at Amazon, right? And I'm like, oh, I remember that. That's pretty impressive. So all in all, it's been a journey. It's been learning, and I really would love to continue doing more of these, whether being a guest with other folks and supporting them, which I haven't really done enough of, honestly.
Yeah.
But also, season 3, and making sure that I'm, you know, sometimes my brain kicks in. I'm like, I gotta say something. I gotta jump in. David's talking, but I gotta jump in. But generally, I've had an amazing time. I've learned a lot. So that's been the
Awesome.
best part.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that, man. It's been, this is going on year 7 for me, but just podcasting in general, right? So now, obviously, with this show's only we're going into year 3 with the Identity Jedi Show, but I started podcasting 6 years ago, and it's definitely, I think it helps for me. I mean, I have a background in music, right? I was part of a label when I was in college, so I've been around like just kind of back end audio engineering, stuff like that, or whatever. So a lot of the stuff around like recording and getting it set up, that wasn't hard for me. I was like comfortable with a lot of that. But I think the thing is like running a production and kind of getting used to like the flow, right? And figuring out like what you're going to talk about, how you're going to schedule interviews, and like what do you want to do, and what does the audience respond to. It's been great, like just kind of learning all of it and just kind of putting it together. And I think this year with the Identity Jedi Show, I think finally being able to put something together that was easier for me to do because it's identity, and there's things that happen, there's things I love to talk about, and to be able to interview different people has been super cool, and just to kind of see the response from it. Has been amazing, right? What we've seen, like with the YouTube channel growth, and we're going to go over some of the stats a little bit later on, just to kind of share with everybody. But no, it's been cool, and I've been happy to have you, dude. I was so glad, like when we talked about it, I was like, all right, because I'm gonna be honest, I can be honest with you, we're friends, but like, because so many people come up to me and it's like, I want to start a podcast, I want to get in a podcast. I'm like, okay, cool, like, and I'm like, all right, and they're excited for like 5 minutes, and then they get into like, hey, like we've got to schedule this and we've got to talk about it and all these things. And it's like, people tend to be like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. So when at first I was like, okay, cool. I was like, and we kind of had our first couple of meetings I was excited about. I was like, all right, let's see. And then like, you really dove into it. And I was like, and I started to see you were having fun with it, which was awesome. So I was like, this is great. So it's been great, man. Yeah. Season 3 is going to be awesome. I've got to, we haven't had our planning session about it yet, but I've been planning with the team, the media team, about like how we want to set it up and do it. So season 3 is going to be amazing. We're going to get into that a little bit later. So, audience will share that with you. But it's time to level up some stuff. We got some things that's going to make it a lot more fun, a lot more easy for us to kind of do this and kind of get it out to you, but also allows us to be a little bit more consistent. So those are some things I'm looking forward to. So cool, man. With that, we're going to, like I said, this is a live, so I knew we were going to kind of go over the place. We have some highlights for you from season 2, but actually we've got enough time. I'm going to squeeze them in right now. We've got enough time. And then we're going to get into some of our highlights. So I texted Amir and I asked him what are some of his favorite, episodes from this season. And of course, because we're co-hosts, we like 2 out of the 3 were like the same ones that I would have picked. So I was like, this is awesome. So I created some highlight reels to show you guys from season 2. Listen, if you missed any of the episodes, right, I would really reach out and tell you, like, go back and like listen to some of the older episodes. I mean, we had some great guests. We had some amazing guests, actually. Let me step back. We had some amazing guests on the podcast this year. And there's some really good stuff. And that's not just me like kind of tooting our own horn, but like I was going back and doing the clips to me, and I was just like, man, like we had some really dope conversations. It was really fun. So I implore you to go back and do that. So we're going to go through some of the highlights from this past year, some of our favorite episodes. So we're gonna start off with let's do Rama's first, because this was a really fun episode. So we got some highlights for you from there. This was Rama from Menlo VC that we had on, and we talked about a bunch of stuff. So here's a highlight from that. It's like trying to show that, and we'll come right back. And a unicorn all at the same time, and they couldn't just be some stiff person who all talked about numbers. We didn't want any of that. That's not how this podcast goes.
Most people would have bounced, but David and I and a couple others just literally stood in the restaurant next to the people sitting down, and it was the most fun and actually the highlight for me from Black Hat to me in that role was learning sales. Like nobody teaches you sales in school. There's no sales course, there's no sales major. But everything we do, even in my job in venture capital, the startup founders we're talking to, it all comes down to sales.
It's indispensable to not be customer facing and be technical. I mean, now you need both. I feel, at least.
It was all about growth at all costs, right? And VCs were piling money into companies and not really looking at burn rate, right? It was like, you got to be able to triple, double. That was the mantra. It's still the mantra. But now it's like, okay, do that, but do it. And all of a sudden, we hit the brakes and we were like, whoa, these companies are spending way too much money to grow as fast as possible. Now we start talking about burn multiple, which is an easy way to calculate, okay, how much new ARR or revenue are you adding per year? And one of my buddies asked my daughter, what does daddy do? And without skipping a beat, my daughter said, daddy sells money. And I said, what? I'd never used those words before, to describe what I'd done, but she was right at a first principles. It takes a special type of maniac to start a company and really scale it.
Be good to each other, be kind to each other, love each other. We'll see you guys on the next show. Man, that was such a great, he dropped so much knowledge on that episode. I was so thankful that he was willing to just share like his story and what it was like kind of being a VC. So he's definitely gonna come back again. I'm gonna bug him like every day until he agrees to come back on again. That was a really fun episode.
I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, it's he was unshackled. I mean, we've all spoken to VCs, pitched to VCs, have VCs as friends, but I think just coming out and saying it, how you ask great questions in that. I still remember, like, how do you raise money? Why do they say no? And how do you pick your startups, right? And the numbers are staggering. I mean, how many people he talks to before he actually,
Right?
kind of puts in money is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well,
it's a tough job.
You're right. And you're investing those high numbers of dollars. I get it. So, all right, next up, this is actually, we're going to kind of spoil a little bit of a surprise, but next up, we're going to highlight from Jamie Wallace. That was one of our favorite episodes. Talking about security and usability. So we're getting into that highlight. And spoiler alert, he's actually going to be on our virtual roundtable coming up here in a couple of minutes. So that's awesome. So let's take a quick peek at that highlight. Here we go.
And I think sometimes we can learn things from kids, right? I think we take things too seriously.
At some level, we're all just controlling access. Multi-factor authentication doesn't mean more effort, right? I think I need to get a T-shirt made that says that because people just think if I'm not working harder, then it's not more secure. We're going to absorb the complexity for you, and we could maybe even reduce the friction and add security. If I'm not figuring out how to make it easy for them to do the right thing in the space that I want them to work in, I have every confidence that they're going to work around me.
Security just says no to everything and makes everything harder, right? And that's not what you want your users to have, because now you've just made everything harder.
The trust that security can go and earn with the business by actually delivering things like that gives us permission to go do the things we have to do occasionally. If you don't have a focus in your security teams on actually building innovative solutions, then you've outsourced innovation to someone else, and you're just here to go, here's the rules, I'm going to yell at you if you break them, but I'm not actually here to help solve anything.
Think about like the best product that you've ever used. Like, you are so excited about it. It was about delighting the customer, right? Like, when you do that, the customer will tell everybody, like, you're just like, oh my God, I love this product.
Nobody wants to remember another password in their life. Nobody wakes up and goes, I've heard estimates 90 to 200 individual passwords. Man, I want another one, right? And oh, please send a code to my phone that I left in the other room. Nope, I need you to talk to me like a third grader. Nope, I need you to.
Yeah, dummy down is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was so good to have somebody on the pod like who was passionate about like usability and security, right? Like something that I had talked about so many times before, and I was just like, I just come to the fact I was like, security just doesn't care, right? I was like, but if they cared about usability, like how much easier it would be like to get a lot of this stuff, rolled out, to get users to buy in, because it's like at the end of the day they have to use it. If they don't, like they're going to go around it. So that was a great conversation, man. Jamie's got a wealth of knowledge, so I can't wait to hop in on the roundtable and just see where the conversation goes with them. But yeah, that was a really fun episode too. So make sure listeners go check. If you didn't listen to that one, go check that one out. Jamie dropped some serious knowledge. Made me and Samir both rethink some things. Like, man.
Yes.
All right, so we've got one more highlight, but we're gonna get to it later because we're gonna shift. We've got our special guest backstage waiting. We're gonna kick off this virtual roundtable here today. And listen, we're gonna keep it, super casual. We're just gonna talk about, just get everybody's, opinions and on, this year in identity, what they liked about this year, what themes they saw, what things they're looking forward to next year. So that's why we're going to have this roundtable. So without further ado, we're going to welcome our guests. Like I said earlier, we had Jamie Wallace, who was a member or a guest on the pod earlier. So he's agreed to come on. And we also have Ido from Token Security on as well. So let's bring them on stage. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for hopping in. Happy holidays, everybody. Glad to see you guys all again. We'll probably get a couple of more. I know there's some other people that agreed to, but they can hop in if need be. If not, we'll just go ahead and get started. But first of all, thanks so much for, number one, being a guest on the podcast. We loved having you on. We had the conversations that we had with both of you, and thanks for agreeing to do this. Hope you guys had a good holiday season so far and still going, and getting ready to hop into 2025.
Happy New Year, guys. Thanks for the invitation.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello.
So let's do real quick intros because we think you guys are famous and you should be famous. But for those people that don't know you, we'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself. Jamie, we'll start with you and then we'll hop over to Ito.
Jamie Wallace. I lead the cybersecurity and identity engineering organization at Travelers, the largest property and casualty insurance company that doesn't advertise on the NFL, and ex Amazon, ex AT&T, came up as a security generalist, and now I've specialized somewhat in identity, but still have a bigger scope than that.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I'm Ido. I lead technology and one of the co-founders of Token Security, the identity security solution built for the machine identity era. Basically handling all of those crazy robots running around, running the internet and more. And I got here after also telling David and Samir about my career as a nation state hacker in the Israeli army, and prior to that, avid gamer of all sorts.
That's right, baby. All right. And we got one more. Venkat, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you guys?
You're just in time. We were just doing introduction, so we'll go ahead and allow you to introduce yourself real quick.
Hey, everyone. I'm Venkat. I'm a product manager at Okta. I've been with Okta for over 6 years now, leading access management product there. And prior to that, I worked as product manager and engineer at Cloudflare, Cisco, and PwC.
Yeah, we won't hold it against you that you work at Okta. Just kidding. Come on. I gotta throw Okta joke in there somewhere. Yeah, just have to. I'm just kidding. Love you guys. All right. So welcome everybody there. I just had to change our since we have all of us on there. Just went from the circle a little bit bigger. As you can see, my broken sign back here that I need to work on. So here's my holiday project I've got to work on. That's gonna come back off at some point anyway. So let's get into it, guys. Roundtable. Man, let's start with what's the biggest theme from identity that you guys took away from this year? Like, what's the thing that you just saw over and over? Like, man, either that A, like, shocked you, like, we're still this bad, or like B, who's just like, hey, this is super cool, like whatever it is, like some major thing that you saw from 2024. Venkat, let's start with you.
I think I briefly touched upon this in the podcast earlier this year. It's more about the shift to identity-centric security. Like I said before, identity was always viewed as more of cost center and just helping people to access the application. I think it has gone beyond that, and it has become one of the critical pieces of security. And everything is starting to revolve around that. And people are trying to be like, okay, how can we start with identity, but how are we going to bridge the gap from there to the security needs? And I think that's becoming very critical. We see this is getting resonated. We spoke about this in Octane as well. This is getting resonated very well. This is where consolidation and a lot of market trends are also happening, because people want to be like, okay, you start with identity, then you want to expand upon, okay, from there, how am I going to look at, not just authentication, but what kind of permissions you have, and then not just on the runtime, but continuously evaluating the posture, like gaps and everything. And I think that shift is very interesting. It's also becoming like it's kind of overlapping. You start with one area, but then you try to have like this consolidation, and that theme seems to be very interesting and resonating a lot. I feel that 2025 will continue to push the needle towards that direction, and yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Awesome. Jamie, what about you, man?
I want to do a contrarian thing and actually say a optimistic good news that I actually think we're getting better and better at authentication. My 2 points. It was so good to have somebody on the pod. My 2 points of evidence there are we see bad actors moving around and not right. They're going back to attacking the edge and vulnerabilities on the edge, right? For a long time, they just came straight at the front door and just logged in as users, because why would they do anything else, right?
Right.
We've actually gotten authentication decent enough at most places. Now you still see, the Change Healthcare, right? Citrix exposed to the internet with just a password, but like we know how to solve that, and we're largely solving it. And the other point of evidence is we see people going after credential reset and credential establishment mechanisms to get in as well, right? Like I'm just going to claim good news that they've moved to the windows or the back doors, and they're not just coming in through the front door anymore. That like we've gotten better and better, and I think we saw that in 2024 for the first time. By no means is identity solved. By no means are we done, but like let's take the win that we've actually forced the bad actors to move into some different directions.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah,
we get to be more optimistic.
Just wanted to add to what Jamie said. I think, like Jamie said, authentication has been like solved really well. Where we need to focus on is like post authentication and pre authentication. Or when I say pre authentication, it's more about how are you going to do enrollment and recovery and in a secure manner. And then like post authentication, the artifacts that gets produced today, a lot of them are still bearer tokens across industry. So I think you need to find out, and I have not got into the governance and other piece, but just in terms of authentication journey, the step of authentication itself has been like with passkeys, WebAuthn and everything. And in fact, if in those cases where you don't use neither, MFA can handle most of the problems well. It's about like after that, when you produce certain artifacts, how are you going to keep them secure? And then if something gets stolen, how can you detect it faster? And then pre-authentication, or like just doing the self-service recovery, how can you do it better rather than sending one-time passwords and reset? Mechanisms like identity proofing, etc., can help you to make those steps, like bolster those steps as well.
Yeah.
If only there was a company out there that would help sell us solutions to do that.
Oh, don't do that, Jamie. Not with two vendors on here. Man, okay, all right. I'm gonna be a little unfair to you. I'm gonna ask you for your theme, but you cannot say non-human.
I promise. I wanted to actually keep on the positive tune that Jamie started, and like play on that. I wanna give I want to give a big shout out to my customers, but also to other companies that I'm sure like people really adopted passwordless and device-bound identity in the last year in like capacity that I haven't seen before. I think that we finally understood that we have these devices that are worth thousands of dollars, and we can ask them to do things for identity. And like we started to understand that, like, yeah, I can ask Apple to have a biometric fingerprint sensor, or like to take my phone and like to identify me. And then I'm no longer like I'm so much less worried about my human identity. But like so much things became trivial that like things cannot get stolen, or it's very, very like high tech, very, very crazy technology that binds everything to your device, to encryption machines that operate like on things that nations couldn't do 10 years ago. Like think about that like your government couldn't produce a very decent biometric authentication 10 years ago, and now every time that you open your password manager or you're logging to identity provider, like you're doing that and you don't even feel it, but you put that fingerprint there and like it logged you in and it worked. So I want to give like a big shout out to all of my customers. Of course, I can add that your dark basement that you don't want to go in and it's full of mold is that machine identity area of your environment, but that's for the next year to take care of.
Yeah, I do think that's interesting, like where we are when it comes to just in general passwordless, and then biometric. Like it hasn't been that long that we've had this technology readily available. It feels like it's always been like that, but when you go back and look at it, let's see, Touch ID was that 2000, like maybe 2008, 2010, somewhere around there, right? And then Face ID was like another 2 years after that. So, okay. So
it's really
at least a
not the
decade.
biometrics that's the revolution here, though. It's the hardware-based root of trust that we've got
Right.
TPMs in our corporate laptops, we've got secure elements in our iPhones. That allows it, because you put a pin in your iPhone and you bind it together with the actual iPhone, it's just as secure, right? And
Right.
I get from the user experience point of view, they don't get that. That they're like, what? My device is doing what, where? And the FIDO protocols and everything we're using in the middle here. But like, to me, that's the biggest game changer. And it happened 10 years ago. We started putting secure elements and TPMs, and
Yeah.
the idea that we would have gone out and done this in mass in order to do this was unthinkable, but because we did it at a consumer level and so we can leverage it, to me, that's the game changer.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And it's, I honestly, I didn't expect such, because we did it at the consumer level. I guess what I'm surprised at is how well the consumers they just took it. They're like, okay, yeah, great. Right. Like, I think us as technologists were, we talked about biometrics and we look at all this stuff or whatever. And I know biometric wasn't the point. I guess where I'm going is like,
yeah,
what the user's able to, what we can put in front of the user that they will accept. I was surprised that they accepted like the Touch ID, the Face ID, like just so quickly. And now it's just ubiquitous, like to the fact where we just use it. It's just everywhere. You don't even kind of like, to your point, Jamie, like all the stuff, all the cool stuff that we geek out that's happening. We're just like, oh my God, do you know what you're doing? They're like, whatever. Like, I need to pay for my I need to pay for my latte. Like, let me do my Face ID and go through. And we're just like, oh my God.
It's not even that secure, right? Like in our nerdy sense of like false positive versus false negative,
Right.
and like all that sort of stuff when you read about the academic papers on biometrics. But when you've bound it together with something else, it's plenty secure enough. It turns out, right? It turns out that a 4-digit pin on your ATM card as a second factor isn't that secure either, that you never change, but you bind it together with your ATM pin, and that's plenty secure enough to drive fraud rates way down. So, kudos to, I think Apple really pushed the ball forward here, and then
absolutely.
drug the Android manufacturers with them to say, hey, there's a better way, and delivered a great experience.
I've said this, like Apple is the largest identity company that nobody knows about from an identity standpoint, right? Like everybody knows about it from a consumer standpoint, right? But like they have set the bar when it comes to so many things from identity security for so long. And like you go to Apple jobs, you don't see any position that says anything about identity. You don't see nothing, right? But like yet they continually get to push, and once they set something, and it's, I mean, you could go back and say, was it, an evil empire kind of plan like 15 years ago when they decided that we're going to release the iPhone that nobody wanted, by the way. Like nobody woke up and said, I want an iPhone, right? Nobody woke up and said, I want an iPod. But like, did they just, Apple, Steve Jobs, that whole crew was just like, this is what people are going to want. And once they see it, they will not think of anything else but this. And by doing that, allows them to go forth and set like the standards around privacy, around security, because I mean, when you've got 60 to 70% of the market, that just kind of becomes a standard. So yeah, like it's amazing kind of sometimes watching what Apple does and how it has effects on the rest of kind of both security and identity, especially on the consumer side, but just in general. So kudos, Apple. I mean, come to Identiverse one day, please. It'd be nice to come talk to you guys about what you're doing. Like they're watching this, but whatever.
like they would come if they were watching this.
Exactly. They're like, whatever. So let's look forward to next year, right? What are, and Samir and I were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier on the pod, right? As we look at the kind of momentum we saw in 2024, some of the themes there, and Venkat, you mentioned this a little bit, like, we've seen a lot of stuff with the consolidation. You think that that's going to continue in 2025? I do as well. But like, what's something we'll do the cheesy thing, right? Let's do our predictions, right? What is something you guys think in 2025? Let's do this. We're not going to do predictions. Let's do wish lists. Don't do predictions. Don't try and predict. Like, what do you want to see? Like, what do you want to see happen in 2025? Like, just whether it be I want to see a company acquire a security company, or I want to see a company actually deliver a product on time. Okay, I'm being mean to vendors. I'll stop. But whatever it is, right? So, let's start with you. What's something what's on your wish list for 2025?
Yeah. Something I feel like it's very small, but for us it was like very, very big. I think that like this year it was the first year that Gartner decided to refer to the term that's called identity security. Like you have all of those identity products. You have identity provider, privileged access management, governance administration. You never were allowed to categorize your product under identity security, and it's the first time that they pretty much accepted it as like something they don't like. And I feel like it's a small win for us, like for the people that's doing things around that practice. That was a good feeling for us. I hope that it goes in 2025.
Awesome. Let's go, Venkat. What about you? What are you looking forward to? What's on your wish list for 2025?
I think that's just a bunch. If I have to just pick top of mind, I just feel that generally we can go through some of the simplification of the jargons. There's just way too many star SPMs, and then it's just the market is extremely as much as it's getting consolidated, the categories that are getting created are so split, and I feel that as a buyer, you might get like overwhelmed with the number of terms and like, oh, we approach the same problem but in a different way. It's just like, oh, it's the same thing, but like, oh, we are coming in a different direction. I'm not going to pick vendors or the names.
Yeah.
But I think at some point, even as an expert, you kind of get confused. Okay, wait, I kind of feel that these two are similar. And I think it just happens because there's just a lot of innovation and a lot of people trying to build products. So at the end of the day, once it matures out, if you consider it as a maturity curve, as and when it matures, I think these will all like even out or flatten. But I think I want to see that more so that it's kind of more simplified. Not that you have to pick just one product, but you can pick 2 or 3. But I think providing that clarity, and I think everyone has a responsibility in doing that, will help a lot for people to not end up with 70 security products to solve the problem and realizing that 40 of them do the same thing, etc. So,
oh, you're being nice with 40. Like 69 of them all do the same thing. Samir, talk about your wish list, man. Unless Samir's frozen. I think Samir's frozen. Yep, we lost Samir. Okay. Well, while Samir figures out his internet connection, Jamie, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I want to play on a theme that I was thinking about over the break. I was talking to a family member who works for a 3-letter government agency that handles trillions of dollars, but he was like, hey, what do you do again? And I was explaining it to him, and he goes, oh, we just got SSO. And I had to hold back my inner dialogue of like, oh, we got that 25 years ago. And it just reminded me of how much there still is like the security poverty line, like Wendy Mather talks about a lot. And it, I think that's true there are organizations that are like way back on the security poverty line, but I think every organization still has those ghetto, right? Or as Ido talked about, the dark, cold basement systems that like we can't turn off, but it's super hard and expensive to modernize, and everyone's forgotten the code base for. So my wish list for 25 is more solutions to make old things more secure, right? Like I have a dream of seeing someone give a conference presentation on password lists for mainframe.
Oh, God.
Right? Like, it's actually not that hard. You could stitch it together, I think, but
Right.
I can't find anyone who's talking about it. And, how many of the Fortune 500 companies are still running 3270 terminals out there? it's an alarmingly large percentage. So my wish list for 25 is more companies to go find let's go pick up all the old technology stuff, not just skate to where the puck is going, but actually make it easier and easier. Because that's the real cost savings for me, right? Those are the really expensive apps to modernize. Solutions that could go in and make that easier without having to touch that code base. That's what I'm shopping for in 25.
Okay. All right. Jamie wants some mainframes. I think that's going to be interesting. I think part of the challenge, right, is that trying to find the knowledge around the systems, especially like the older systems, is just hard, right? Like, I don't know. When I was at Cellpoint, I think we had one person that even remotely knew like mainframes, like that could at least talk to like, okay, what is it? How does it work? What are the things you need to do? Like most of our engineers like didn't even know what they were. Like it's just like we're like some of this technology. I think we're getting to the point where it's like, I mean, I think are we 2 generations away from like when that technology was created? So just being able to find somebody that even knows and knows how to work on it is one thing. But I mean, yeah,
but we've duct taped together MFA or mainframe into a bunch of other systems. So you can sync your Active Directory password with mainframe. You can do OTPs on, one-time passcodes on a mainframe. So it's not a huge jump to go, okay, how could I take those systems we've duct taped in and then pull them in with modern, authentication systems? And when I talk to big vendors about this, they all just sort of look at me like, and I'm like, it's actually not that. It's not that hard. It's going to take a couple of layers, but from a user perspective, I think it could be a game changer.
All right. Well, there we go. All you entrepreneurs that watch this podcast, go figure it out.
Well, I was going to say, entrepreneurs and VCs. Hey, not the only sexy thing. You can fund this. You can fund this as well, right?
Yeah.
But I got cut off right at the moment when Venkat was speaking. So I really, Venkat, I was just thinking about your comment about jargons, right? And I was dreaming of a new jargon. I want to run it by you.
Oh my God!
Right? Let's see what Edo says. It's called non-human identity posture management. You like that?
That sounds about right.
100% with you.
What we were all thinking was
that Samir just froze like in time.
But what we were all thinking is what we need is another 4-letter acronym.
Right.
That's what the
much more
needs.
than 4 letters.
Or is that 5? Non-human identity posture management.
That's 6-letter acronym.
6. Okay. Yeah.
Clearly, Samir's internet didn't like it either. So.
Yeah.
And like for in terms of the password list for mainframe in that similar theme, I think there is like a lot of older protocols that are still used such broadly. Like for example, Radius is like powering so many network-based gateways, authentication, like a lot of VPN servers, but like a lot of the newer technologies have not been lifted and shifted to support Radius, like taking care of like IoTs. If you see that those are like more of less shiny things, but there's just such critical capabilities that are run using these protocols. So I do see that we should take some of these innovations back to those areas which needs, because they're not the most shiny things, but they are very critical for every organization's infrastructure.
All right. So for those listening, we're going to switch to real quick Q&A because we have Venkat. We actually have a question for you that's in the comments as I've been looking. So guys, you've got a panel of experts here, so feel free, shoot your questions. If we're watching this on LinkedIn or YouTube, either one, if you pop it in chat, I'll see it and we'll post it up. So real quick question. Samir's back again. We're going to have him pay his internet bill the next time we do this. But
I think you're kicking me out every time I make a controversial statement, man. I love my acronyms, man.
We think all your kids are streaming in 4K at the same time right
Yeah,
now.
it's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
I was gonna blame Austin, but Jamie lives very close to me, so I can't blame Austin.
Can't blame Austin, man. Can't
Yeah.
blame Austin. All right, so real quick, we had a question from the audience for Venkat. It says, Venkat, are you involved in the IPSIE framework, IPSIE, in case you're not familiar with it? And if so, how do you feel about the progress it's made so far? Any major goals in 2025? So I don't know if you're familiar with IPSIE, Venkat.
Oh, very much.
Okay.
I work on this in my daytime job. But yeah, so for that question, I think the way we need to look at it is like every company started adopting SSO, and then like they said like, okay, SSO is important. Then like companies are like, okay, SCIM is very important for lifecycle management, etc. And I think from there, at least this is an Okta-driven initiative. Of course, it's open source, and like we have already companies like Ping and Microsoft willing to contribute. The thing is like, now that we have seen certain trends in the past 2-3 years as an identity company, we just feel that we need to have certain capabilities at a certain level, just beyond SSO, to hit this optimum level of security as a baseline. And I think IPSIE is basically, taking like, okay, if you're using SSO, let's standardize on OpenID Connect. For older apps, maybe we can retrofit. For newer apps, let's start building with that. And then let's start handling authorization through entitlements, etc. And then like have lifecycle management. And then security is a team game. So let's have like signal sharing framework, etc. to share signals and act upon it. And I think it's a collection of capabilities across the identity lifecycle. What Okta is trying to do is like partner with the identity company so that we can establish the baseline. So I think that's a great win for 2024. Where I want to see this go in 2025 is we want more of the ISV and the SaaS ecosystem to start adopting, because this only gets better if all the companies, like whoever gives SaaS products, adopt the base standards and it's available. It becomes a win-win across companies. Like whether it doesn't matter which identity products you use, but what we are looking to see is like we want the industry to adopt it as a whole. And I think Okta is trying to do that with other companies like Microsoft and Ping, so that we can all achieve this baseline faster. And I think that's going to be like a lot more important. It doesn't matter whether you move from one product to another, but if you can push the baseline and standard to a certain capability, it just helps overall in the industry to develop a better ecosystem.
Awesome. Yeah, one more topic I want to bring up real quick, and then we'll wrap up. And everybody, whoever's got time, you guys are happy to stay and hang around for some more stuff we're going to do here. But one thing that I was really impressed with at Gartner, walking away from that, was how far we've come with the shared signals framework and the actionable integrations that's empowered and allowed to happen. And I saw some really cool stuff with Jamf and Okta with what was the name of this company? Man, I was talking to CTO for like 20 minutes too, and I can't remember. But basically, they're like an app proxy for like SaaS apps, and it can take all of the events from SaaS apps, and then they're taking that and converting that into shared signals to be able to share it. So I think with this two-pronged approach of like, we've got consolidation happening, we've got this identity security, whatever you want to call it, theme of basically we're realizing that, hey, these products can't just operate in a vacuum anymore. They've got to be part of the bigger kind of conversation, and meaning that we need to be able to share this information and understand kind of what's going on, to see that a standards body as quickly as shared signals has kind of come together. It's awesome to see it go from idea to standards body to actual standards to implementation to vendors actually picking up on it, which I'm always down on standards. Like, God bless anybody that works in standards and on those working groups. I cannot do it. I don't have the freaking patience. Oh my, you are saints, all of you. I couldn't, oh man. So the little piece of that I had, I was like, I just ripped my fingernails out, please. But to see what they've done with that, I think is pretty awesome. Where it sets up for having these conversations of now, you've got your security products, you got your identity products to be able to access and share these different signals information and truly right? Here comes the buzzword, which should have been a buzzword, but it's a process. But this truly enables like zero trust type architectures. Now I can say, hey, from the time you log in, I can understand what's happening with your session, and I can take that as a signal and send that to either my governance platform or my CASB platform or wherever. Like anybody can go and get this information. I can understand. I have a much better view and visibility of what this user is doing from the time they come into my environment, what they're accessing, what app they're doing, what's happening with the app, what actions they're taking. Like that is just, to me, that's phenomenal because, for architects out there that truly understands this, and if you have enough of these systems that are supporting shared signals, or even just with it now, if you wanted to create your own, like I'll create my own shared signal server and I'll take this information and convert it into shared signals. Now I can share with any of these platforms that I have within my architecture and go, I now have more true visibility over what this user is doing, from how they're interacting with my app to signals I'm getting from other applications. And now I can make truly, truly rich decisions on, do I want to give this person access? Do I want to remove this access? Like, I think that's amazing. I want to see obviously more vendors, support that. But I think that's going to set up for us to finally truly have zero trust like architectures in the next couple of years. So just open it up the floor. Like, what are your guys' thoughts on shared signals? Have you, anything that you've seen about it? If you're like, Dave, you're too much of an optimist. This sucks. It's not there. Whatever it is. Floor is open.
I would say shared signals depends on shared visibility and like choke points. And so one of the key challenges for any security team is, do I want to be in the middle of every transaction the business does? Right? Do I want to be operationally on the hook for that all the way up to layer 7, where if decrypt fails, if assert rotation fails, if all of a sudden we miscategorize a transaction, like all of the whatever your architecture is, if you're pure SaaS, if you're hybrid cloud, if you're still fully on-prem, most security teams out there don't have the visibility to all the transactions today. And the barrier to doing that is, do we want to go run a platform that everyone has to go through? Can we get to that number of nines of reliability? Does the business trust us enough to actually go do that? If we can get there, then grabbing the right signals off the transaction and knowing what they're doing on the page and all that kind of stuff. But you see, what I see more of is, hey, let's move to the server and let's analyze the data that's there, or let's move to the client and get to a secure browser, because in a lot of ways, it's easier to get the business to trust you to be at the beginning or the end than to constantly be in the middle. And frankly, what is the middle when you're in the middle of a 10-year, 20-year cloud journey and you're not sure where everything's going anymore? So I agree with you, but where you're going to pick those signals up is going to be different based on where you are as an organization.
I think that's, in a way, that's a problem actually shared signal framework can solve, in my opinion. Is that, like, for example, a company like Okta, you have a lot more signal on what apps did you access and what kind of authentication. When it comes to the network level detail or a device level detail, I think we do have information, but we get better when we get more information who specialize. For example, when we pair with CrowdStrike and for example, like a JAMF, you get a holistic signal about, okay, we have the authentication data. There is some signal coming from endpoint protection and the device posture. Together, can we make a decision? And I think it only gets better when you have, SASE and other type of products that start pulling in signals. Then the companies and organizations or like vendors get to build their own heuristic machine. Like how what kind of quality result can you produce by analyzing and digesting all these different signals and making a decision of it. And I think that's a win-win for shared signal framework, because any company can be a pub and sub in this model. And then it's up to the game of like what kind of heuristics engine you can build and make a decision off of it. So I think it's another great standards or like an innovation where everyone can contribute irrespective of the competition. So,
what's your thoughts, man? Given your background, I'm curious to see what your thoughts around this are.
Yeah. So I love observing like the technology world and like, deep currents inside it. And I think that like it's a good idea, but that XKCD comics that says like, okay, I'm gonna invent one standard that's gonna finish all of the problems, and then like before you started it, there were 15 standards and now there's 16 standards. But I'm not saying like I'm super I'm very optimistic about like the future of this project, but I think that like it needs one big corporate sponsor, which is Microsoft. Unfortunately, like we all are very much fond in like adopting cloud products and like hugging them and like, oh man, I have such a cool product and I move so fast because I'm like a company that could allow that for myself. Eventually, like when you don't port back like these things and you don't have the corporate sponsorship of organization that develop Active Directory, and like maybe echoing a bit about like the passwordless for mainframe, as Jamie said before, I think that like you're not going to make a big progress in the world, and like you need some kind of like more resources, more like push, more. I think that it's in the right direction, but I wish that 2025 would be the year that we see it like leap over the corporate fence and like start going into like Fortune 100, Fortune 500, and so on, like to see people really acting together with the framework.
Gotcha. You hear that, Microsoft? Keep going. Yeah, right. I'm just kidding, Microsoft. Don't cut off I don't really use a lot of their products anyway. So, actually, you know what? Microsoft, fix Teams for the love of God, please.
Yeah, I know, right?
Please fix Teams, please. Anyway, okay. So, listen, everybody, thank you so much for joining us for the roundtable. I'm going to go through some of the comments because we've had an active discussion here in the comment thread. Matter of fact, I should put that back there. There's the overlay, so you guys can see some of the comments we got going on. Paul Lanzi, I'm optimistic about standards. I contribute myself, of course you do, to helping drive Skim forward. I'm not yet optimistic about it, Ipsy. Okay. And let's see. More customers to demand SSF support from vendors. We got the Ipsy framework. Okay. So we're good. Just seeing if there's any more questions in the chat. It's been about it. Jamie, Vinket, Ito, thanks so much for coming and hanging out. Like I said, you guys are more than welcome to hang around, but I know you guys are probably super busy, got other things to do. We're going to, I don't use Microsoft while streaming on LinkedIn. Hey, listen, good point. Okay. Good point. I forgot that Microsoft bought LinkedIn. All right, whatever. So there you go. Microsoft, I use one of your products all the time. It's LinkedIn. God, that's so weird. I forgot they bought them. Anyway, gentlemen, thanks so much for coming to hang out. Have a very happy new year. Can't wait to see all of you guys and do more stuff with you guys in 2025. Thanks so much for being, a guest on the podcast. As we start doing, season 3 and get that planning, we'll send out a call again and love to have you guys back on the show whenever you want. And then, we'll let you guys know about some secret events that we've got planned for next year that might be fun for you guys to be a part of. So,
All right, take care.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, David. Thanks, Samir.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Good to meet you guys.
Boom, boom. All right. So next up on our agenda, as we're getting ready to wrap some of this up, I'm going to have the chat overlay real quick. We're going to jump into some of the stats. So like I said at the beginning, this was really an amazing year, both for the podcast and the newsletter. And I'm going to take a little bit just to kind of give everybody a peek behind the scenes of how all this kind of runs and operates. So I own a media company, On the Corner Media, and that is the media company, the company behind the Identity Jedi newsletter, the podcast, and some other things that I'm not going to tell you just yet that we put out. And so, looking back on the year and what we were able to do this year, we just saw a lot of explosion from both the newsletter side and from the podcast side, and a lot of it kind of just caught me off guard. I just kind of looked back at it at the end of the year, and I was like, wow, we did a lot. So I wanted to share that with all of you because it's you guys, it's the listeners who helped make all of this happen. And so I'm forever grateful for all of you, grateful for the team, grateful for Samir, but definitely grateful for you because if you guys don't listen and do this, I'm gonna go with these numbers. So we're gonna share some of the numbers. Let's see, what's the best way to do this? Let's shift this. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. Start from the beginning. All right, by the numbers for this year. We're gonna start with the pod. So this was actually pretty awesome. So Spotify does their Wrapped if you're a Spotify listener. So I won't say exclusively, but we stream this to Spotify. So that's the hosting platform for our podcasts. It's the better way to say that. We don't stream it. We host this on Spotify. Spotify then pushes it out everywhere else. And so because of that, we get a Spotify Wrapped. So here are the numbers for 2024, what we did on Spotify from the podcast perspective. So you can see the numbers. Over 300% listeners, 400% streams, 300% followers. This one in the middle was super just kind of dope for me, and it can cause me to really kind of take a step back and be like, wow. The Identity Jedi Show was in the top 20% of videos on Spotify. Like, on Spotify, people. Like, that was wow. Thank you. Like, just amazing to see that kind of type of engagement. We have listeners from 17 different countries. And now it didn't give me a breakdown of the countries, but it just told us 17 countries. Top country was the United States. So we are international, Samir. That we're international, baby. That's amazing. That's how we do. So huge thank you to everybody listening. If you're on Spotify, if you haven't listened on Spotify, so Spotify is, obviously you can just listen to it from the audio version, but the video's there as well. And then we also kind of put that on YouTube. So hey, go check us out on Spotify. And also on Spotify, we're going to do a better job of this in season 3. We'll put poll questions in there so you can actually interact and answer some of the polls, stuff like that on Spotify. So definitely check us out there. Now we're going to hop to the newsletter. Some real quick stats for the newsletter. Just a lot of content, right? So over 70,000 words written. That's a lot of words in 1 year. 50,000 impressions. So the Identity Jedi newsletter is at theidentitijedi.com. This ships every other Wednesday, right? So comes in. I write this. This is still actually all written by me. That maybe change it to 2025. Looking to get some editors to kind of come in and help with some of the content. Again, kind of international, most of the United States, 4% in Canada, 4% in the UK. Readers, look at that. And this is kind of what I'm most proud of. So we have 67 posts. Our open rate, 70%, like huge. Like that's what I love about the newsletter audience is that you guys read this stuff, and that 7.8% click rate is pretty good too. So again, just sharing some of these numbers, some of these milestones, I wanted to share them with everybody there because you guys are the reason why this is happening, right? It's you that are engaging, it's you that are listening, that are reading. So thank you, so much for that. It gets my team excited to continue to create more and more content. And it gets me excited to continue to do this stuff, right? Because I think anybody that has any kind of like solopreneur or starts your, entrepreneur journey, like it is, there's days where it just feels like it's just you and you don't know if this is actually resonating, especially doing something like content because you're just kind of going out into the void. But to be able to look back on it and know that you guys are engaging again, it's pretty awesome. So wanted to share that, some quick highlights. Thank you so much for that. We've got one more highlight that we're going to do from this past year. We're going to show that. Then we're going to take a quick break, probably about like 2-3 minutes, right? And then we're going to wrap up. We're going to come back with some announcements for next season, some things that we're working on the pipe, and then just some final thoughts from me and Samir. So let's hover to our highlight. This was from Identiverse 2024. Me and Samir hanging out. We had a whole, nice little podcast suite set up where we had people come and do some interviews. And this was actually a really fun time. So we're going to show you highlight from that.
This is your first Identiverse. So what do you think so far of the show?
I think it's much more manageable than the craziness of RSA.
Yeah,
where,
definitely.
RSA, I felt like everyone I was bumping into was a salesperson.
Yeah.
Which is like, wait, don't I want to meet some people who actually practice security? Yeah. If you don't buy it before the end of the month, you're going to pay double. So they're putting that pressure on you, right? Like, if you don't buy it, you're going to pay a lot more money. There's a big buzz around non-human identities.
Yeah.
And a ton of money flowing into that space, right? What do you do about humans that become machines? Right? The transformers, the human who can control a machine.
Right.
Identity, not the machine itself. When these companies get bought, it becomes less about making the customer happy. It becomes more about how many more widgets can we sell?
Yeah.
And then burn that.
I always think, man, it's bullshit. Like, you don't need to do it or else the culture innovate. You just innovate.
Why is Apple booming in terms of sales of their machines, right? It's because it's just easy and intuitive, right? So we at work also want things that are easy and intuitive.
We're going to have an entire generation that comes up and like, the only way they know how to interact with software is prompting.
I'm laughing at the cost of the Apple headset, right? But people who use it, they're still getting headaches and it's not perfect yet. But they can do some things pretty fast. If you open up the Pandora's box, you're going to get hallucination and errors and all that stuff.
The only way it gets better is like when you correct and go, okay, no, this is the right one.
Yeah.
Now you give it that feedback, and then what happens? It gets better.
All right.
That
Man.
was fun.
Yeah, that was fun. And it was so interesting, right? Like that. So that was this past Identiverse, right? Yeah. Identiverse.
Yeah.
So that was like Mayish, June, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And same thing, right? Non-human, right? So we even saw it then, like there was this big kind of buzz going around, non-human and what we saw from an investment standpoint into it. So it's going to be so interesting that category next year. So shout out to all the non-human vendors, Asterix, Token, Ito, for coming out. Me and Ito got a chance to hang out in Dallas. Clutch Security.
A few more.
Natoma. There's a bunch. Ambit, AEMBIT, Ambit, Oasis.
Natoma. I don't know if you heard of Natoma. I heard of them.
Yeah, Natoma. No, actually, I have Natoma. I just hung out with you. I just talked to them like last week. So I met one of the founders. He's a friend of Ian Glazer's, and so we met at Gartner, and then we ended up hopping on the Zoom call last week. So that was pretty cool. Then Natoma. So yeah. Tons of vendors out there, man. Good luck to all of you. Okay, just good luck, right? Innovate, please do some amazing things. Can't wait to see what you guys do. All right, so we're gonna take a real quick break. It's only gonna be like 2 minutes, 2-minute break, so you can go, stretch, get your questions ready, right? Because we're gonna do the mailbag. Intro is another non-human company. Thanks. So I love this, man. We have engagement. People are letting us know. All right, so. Stretch, take a break, grab some water, something like that. Whatever you need to do. We're going to be back in about 2 minutes. We're going to go to the mailbag. So we've got some questions, Samir, that people have sent in that we're going to answer. We're going to talk about what's up and coming for season 3, what we're going to do. And then I've got a special announcement for everybody. And then we're going to wrap up and allow you to get to your new year. So 2-minute break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Well, I'm back. I don't think Samir's back. Nope. Yeah. We're going to have to get Samir some dedicated bandwidth. All right. So I'm going to jump into some of the mailbag questions. Samir will be back here in a sec. So I put out the call to send in some questions. Kind of ask us anything style. So if you're watching on the chat, feel free to jump into questions is there. We're going to do some mailbag questions here, and let's see what we get. All right. Coming in, and because I didn't put this out. I did not. There's Samir coming back in. Welcome back, sir. So I'm not going to name the names because I didn't think to ask about that when I sent out the responses for the mailbag. So I won't call names. We'll just kind of read the questions. So obviously, you know your question, you'll hear it. So, all right, Samir, you ready for the mailbag questions? Samir, are you back?
Hey, David, I can't hear you for some reason.
You can't hear me? Technical difficulties. Let's see.
Oh, it's on my side. It's on my side. Let me fix it this way. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Some weird reason I can't hear you. Oh.
So check your
audio.
Yeah, but say
Yeah,
settings.
That's on me. It's on me.
Okay.
Okay, it's my fault, David.
All right, you back?
Yes. And I have somebody extra on the podcast who wants to be part of it.
Uh-oh, look at that. All right. Yeah, thanks, Donovan. Okay, so we're back. We're good. We're going to do some mailbag questions. Let's say, okay, here's a good one. How do you convince executive leadership to prioritize identity security when it's often seen as an IT issue and not a business enabler? Good question. Good question. We've talked about this a lot in different aspects on the podcast. So I'll give you some general advice, right? Obviously can't be specific because I don't know your exact situation, but what the biggest thing it comes down to, one, you've got to tie a business function to what it is you're trying to get done, right? So if you're talking to your executive leadership, understand what's important to them from the business perspective, right? What are the things they're trying to hit on either this quarter, this year, whatever it is. Find out what's important to them. And then you need to start to map and work your way backwards from what's important to them to how that ties into identity security and things that you want to be able to do, right? Frame your story around, something that's, whether it's, hey, we're going to, if you're automating join and move relievers, right? So we're going to reduce, onboarding load for our HR and our IT departments. And so we're going to gain this much efficiency to get users to work, that much sooner to get them the access they need. And why is that important? It's important because, maybe there's a leader looking at, efficiency across the board and saying that, we need to get more efficient, or I'm making something up there, but like, you've got to find what's important to your leaders and then tie it back and start framing that story. That's the biggest thing that I can tell you. And you have to start from where they are first. You can't go with, hey, we need to do identity security because it's really important. And here's why, and we can stop all these breaches, because most of the time the business leaders don't care about that. So you got to start with what they care about and then walk your way back. Samir, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think finding the right allies in the company that are driving digital transformation, change, even security teams that are kind of tangential sometimes, or infrastructure teams. If there's a new infrastructure refresh, tie it to that, get credibility, and then people want to come to you as the beachhead into getting their projects funded, right? So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Okay, here's another one. As someone managing IM at a mid-market company with limited resources, what are the top 3 areas to focus on to improve security without breaking the budget? Love the show. Love you and Samir. Oh, thanks. We love you too. Okay, so I guess I can get back in Microsoft's good graces right now. So honestly, like, if you're a mid-market company, like the first thing I would look at is like if you are on Microsoft, and most companies are, like start there, right? Microsoft through their Defender and some of the things they have with like premium, you can get a majority of the things that you need done, from endpoint protection to conditional access policies, right? They've even got some cool stuff now with Intune, where you can, like, it's more mobile access management that you can configure. There's a lot of things that you can configure with Microsoft and get a lot of the things you need from identity security perspective taken care of, right? It just comes down to that budgeting cost and seeing like, okay, what access do I have and what does that give me? One of the cons with that is it's not as put together as you would probably like, meaning you're going to have to search back in there and figure out how all these things connect together. It's not very friendly in that case, but from just a budget standpoint and resources, there's a lot there that you can manage. And so the areas that I would say to focus on, so obviously like SSO, right, and authentication first. So the more that you can get into your SSO profile, the better. Try and make sure that any app that you're using is already SSO enabled, and you just start that way. Work with, as a smaller company, work on that endpoint protection, right? Microsoft's actually got some really great tools around, endpoint and email protection and phishing resistance, right? Go there, because you're going to, if you're at a smaller company, usually like you're moving really fast. You've got these users that are out doing different things. And that's one of the key areas that attackers use to kind of get in. So I would go those two things first. And then finally, I would look at, some kind of like governance, just being able to measure who has access to what and do a campaign, right? Nothing kind of crazy, but again, Microsoft's identity governance, project is pretty good with that. You can just go through, understand who has access to what. I'd love for you to do it every quarter, right? If it's 6 months, or if you got to do it yearly, that's fine. But you're a little bit, so you're smaller. I don't really know what your size is, but so it won't be that big of a burden. But yeah, I would just lean heavily into, if you're a Microsoft shop. If you're not a Microsoft shop, then it kind of depends, right? Google's, if you're a Google Office type of shop, they have some of theirs, but it's not great there, right? They've got some things there, but Microsoft's kind of a little better for most of that stuff.
I agree. Or Okta is pretty good at some things as well.
Yep.
So I think focusing on, making sure that your critical SaaS applications, the crown jewels, if you will, turning on MFA. There's different types of MFA, adaptive MFA. You can kind of raise the bar on, kind of legacy MFA. I agree with you, David, getting as many apps under the SSO umbrella. And then from a review and kind of risk standpoint, Microsoft actually has some decent stuff out of the box.
Yeah,
that you can start showcasing value.
Yeah, the risk signal stuff they have around authentication is really good, right? So I think for mid-market, right, I think they've built probably one of the most, they have the most comprehensive tools together for a mid-market, even to like a small enterprise level, to manage it. It's not all that tied together. Like I will not lie to you, it's a pain in the ass to navigate and figure out and stitch together. But once you do, it's kind of there. So cool, good stuff. Hope that helps. We'll do one more. With AI playing a bigger role in identity security, how do you recommend balancing automation with the need for human oversight? Shout out to all of the entrepreneurs out there. Okay. All right. Shout out to all the entrepreneurs. Great. Yeah. I think this is, I'm biased because I'm very pro AI. I think it's, when you hear AI and hear automation, I think people just automatically assume that the human is completely out of the loop. I don't think that's the way to go. I think it's more so, it's not necessarily human oversight, but it's just human interaction. You create your AI tools to be a tool for the human. So they're constantly using it and engaging with it, allowing them to do their job more efficient and faster and bringing information and doing tasks that humans are just bad at. So I think you get your human oversight by just not implementing it in a way to where, hey, this is going to do everything for you. It's like, hey, this is now what you're going to use to be able to go do this. I'll give you a very concrete example, right? And we're probably seeing this across marketing companies, product marketing, organizations. Like right now, the AI stuff is fantastic for anything writing and marketing and making copy. So here's your AI buddy, right? To help you get started. Like, go draft me 5 drafts of this, article that I want to do. Okay, now go look at it. No, it's not these themes. Let me go work on this. I don't like the way it said that. Let me dissect it and put it apart. Like, make AI a part of their process to where they're using it and not just go produce this for me and go do it. Right. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, the AI thing is still being played out. It's going to be played out for over time, right? I think there's every startup I hear from now is an agentic AI play, right? But I think I think you're right. I think it's almost like, how, David, when you and I used to talk about programming, right? It's almost becoming a basic skill now for banks and big companies. So it's like a basic skill. How do you do prompt engineering? How do you, know the right questions to ask, et cetera, et cetera. The people who are familiar with and know how to leverage AI to become a better version of their work self, I think is where we're headed.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I think 2025 is going to be the year of agentic AI. I think that's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be the oh shit moment for a lot of people with this, right? To where we're going to see a lot of things that it's like, wow, this truly is kind of game changing. So, all right. So we're 5 after the other. We're going to start wrapping up. There's a couple of things that, some announcements that I want to make. And then some final thoughts. But before I do that, some shout outs to sponsors. To everybody that sponsored the podcast, I'm going to call you out by name. So Strata.io. Shout out to you guys for being such a great sponsor. ReadyBots, the Canadian crew up there, David and Kevin. Super cool. Thank you guys so much for your sponsorship. I'm forgetting somebody. Dscope. Shout out to Dscope. You guys have been a big sponsor for the newsletter. Thanks so much for that. Zilla Security, another sponsor from the year. Shout out to you guys. So if I'm missing somebody, I should have written this down as a list. Sorry, guys. There's a lot to do today. But those are the ones that I can remember offhand. I might be missing one other person in there, but I don't think that's the main companies. Thank you so much for your sponsorship help. I've had so many people reach out to me about sponsoring for 2025. Absolutely. You can email us at identityjedi@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. We've got sponsorship packages available, and we're redoing some things for next year. So happy to have, any of you guys sponsor the podcast and collaborate with you on that. And now some announcements. So we've been talking a lot about season 3. Season 3 is going to come. It's going to start somewhere around like late March, early April. So end of Q1, beginning of Q2. I've been working with the media team, and we've been planning some stuff on how we want to shoot it. Samir and I are going to be going into planning around content and what we want to have. And not much is going to change, I think, from your perspective. I think the way that we put it together is going to change on our end. We're going to make it, the way that I've talked about it is kind of an identity variety show, meaning we're going to have, information that we talk about, what's going on in the news, things that we see. We're still going to have interviews, but we just won't be as heavily interview focused, which allows us to deliver a little bit more consistency with when we get the show out there and what we can kind of put out there, because trying to get people's schedules is ridiculously crazy and hard. And then it kind of makes things hard for consistency. So, we're going to be putting together some kind of more programmatic themes for that that allows us to kind of get the show out. So, and we're going to be adding more live shows, right? So we're really looking forward to that. That planning process is going to start like immediately, like next week. Going to start talking to some people about areas where we can do a live show. The goal is to hit one on every part of the U.S. So West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, and then one extra one somewhere, probably just Atlanta because that's where I live. Or probably Austin because I used to live there. I know Samir's there. So, because I don't think we can't count Austin as the Midwest. So, I don't think Texas would like that. But so that is definitely going to be, planning and coming out. So we'll let you guys know about that. Obviously to keep up with everything, subscribe, here either on YouTube or on, Spotify. If you want to subscribe to the newsletter, that's why I send out a lot of the email updates. But we appreciate everything that all you guys have done, for following, for listening, for engaging, for being here today. So Samir, we had, I think at most right now we're sitting at 22,000, but we had like 25,000 people at one point on the YouTube. I think that was the highest one. My guys were texting me in the back. So thanks everybody so much for doing that. Thanks everybody for being in the chat. Pat, Donovan, Paul, shout out to you guys for coming in, chatting with us. Shout out to our amazing guests who came on. So Samir, any kind of final things as you look back on this year that you want to just kind of get off your chest there, bud?
No, I think I got most of my stuff off my chest during the whole year. No, I'm looking forward to a very exciting 2025. I think with agentic AI, with some market consolidation, with platformization approach, right? I think we'll see bigger rounds where people are saying, okay, if I'm going to go take on Okta, I need X amount of dollars, right? If I'm going to go take on a big behemoth like CyberArk, I need X amount of dollars. So that's going to be interesting to see who gets funded in that way. And I'm rooting for the underdog. I want to see them win.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So here's the big announcement I've been teasing all morning. So starting this Friday at 3 p.m., right? I will be launching a LinkedIn newsletter and micro podcast. It'll be available on Spotify. The newsletter will be on LinkedIn, and it's called Wait, I'm in Charge. And I'm just going to be talking all about leadership. So one of the things when I started the media company, it wasn't just to cover identity. Newsflash, folks, I have a lot more interest than just identity. Identity Jedi Show is not going anywhere. I'll continue to do that. Like I said, that'll be kicking off into March, beginning of April. But this new one will be coming. It's a micro podcast. I think the longest so far episode is like 15 minutes. So it's going to be anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes. It's going to drop every Friday, 3 p.m. It'll be done as a LinkedIn newsletter, so you can follow and read it there. It's going to be a written blog post. It's going to be a short video, and then it's going to be the micropod. So you have 3 different ways to consume it, however you like to, if you'd rather just listen to it. The actual podcast is narrated by myself. The video that's put together is AI generated, so helps on the content and allows me to kind of put some stuff there. I write the script, and then I just kind of generate it there. So, but you're going to have different ways of consuming it, and I'm just going to be talking about a bunch of different things that I've learned in leadership across my career. For those that kind of really know me and we've had a chance to kind of talk, leadership is a huge thing with me. Like I have studied this since I was in my mid-20s. It is something that I do not take lightly, that I hold anybody in a leadership position to a very, very high standard, as I believe everybody should, because leadership is a privilege. It absolutely is to be able to lead somebody in any facet of life or whatever it is. Somebody's putting their trust in you to guide them in the right direction. And I think that sometimes we take that for granted, and there's not a lot of resources sometimes for that. And so this was something I started planning. Samir was talking about earlier, like I started looking at next year, what I want to do. This kind of came together, and then I got inspired, started creating it and started writing stuff together. So that launches this Friday, every Friday, 3 p.m. The podcast is exclusively on Spotify. I'm just putting it on Spotify. So there's poll questions on Spotify that you can get and listen to. And like I said, they're short, 5 to 15 minutes at most, something that you can just kind of really quick listen to, and hopefully it provides some value. I've had a ton of fun creating it, and can't wait to see how that goes. So there you go. New podcast, new blog coming from yours truly. Another On the Corner Media product. We're doing big things out here, man. We're doing big things. So I think it's a wrap, man.
Yep.
That is a wrap. Samir, Happy New Year, buddy.
Same to you, man.
Have fun out there in Austin. Be safe. Well, I don't know. You might not be in Austin.
No, I'm in Austin. I hope you move here soon.
No, I'm not moving.
It's not going to happen. I know. But Texas, you said Texas might be an option. So let's see.
It might be, man. I do miss not paying state taxes. I miss that so much.
I thought Georgia was tax state.
No,
tax
man.
No? Oh.
No. Yeah, they
bad.
tax. I don't really like it. But we'll see. I could see a Texas rebound, but I don't know about Austin, man. I don't know if I could do it. I'll have to see what happens with South Austin, because that's been growing a whole lot, like all the way down the backdrop. I was like, that maybe, but
yeah.
Anyway, Happy New Year, bud. Happy New Year, everybody. Be safe. Have fun. We'll see you guys in 2025. Thanks so much for joining. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, love each other. We'll see you guys in 2025.